The underestimated species. The stars hung like distant lanterns in the viewport as Commander Ilara Voss stared out at the vastness of space. Behind her, the command center of Earth's hidden lunar base hummed with activity, technicians and officers moving with the focused precision of people who knew exactly how much was at stake. "They're coming," announced Strategic Director Wei, her voice cutting through the background noise. "The Hegemony fleet has just crossed the Kuiper Belt. 16 vessels, including their flagship." Ilara turned from the viewport, her scared face impassive. 10 years of service in Earth's Space Defense Force had taught her to keep her emotions locked away, especially in front of her crew. "Time to arrival." "Approximately 6 hours," Wei replied, swiping through holographic displays. "They're making no attempt to conceal their approach. They want us to see them coming." "Of course they do," said General Okafor, joining them at the central holotable. "Fear is the Hegemony's favorite weapon. 70 years of being pushed around by aliens with better technology, and they still think we'll just roll over." The holotable displayed the approaching armada, massive ships that dwarfed anything in Earth's conventional fleet. The Hegemony had ruled this sector of the galaxy for millennia, treating Earth as little more than a resource-rich backwater since first contact. Humanity had been allowed limited access to the stars, granted just enough technology to be useful, but never enough to be a threat. "Has the UN Security Council made a decision?" Ilara asked, studying the tactical display. General Okafor's expression darkened. "They're still debating. Half want to capitulate to the Hegemony's demands, triple our resource tributes, and allow them to establish permanent military installations in orbit. The other half want to fight, even though conventional wisdom says we'd be annihilated." "Conventional wisdom doesn't know about Thunderbolt," Ilara said quietly. The general nodded. "Which is why you're here, Commander. If the vote goes the way I expect, Operation Lightning Strike is a go. You'll take Thunderbolt out to meet them." Ilara felt a shiver run through her body, part fear, part anticipation. For 3 years, she had trained with the prototype vessel, hidden in the shadowed craters of Luna's far side. A ship unlike any other, built with reverse-engineered alien technology and humanity's unique innovations, a ship that only she could pilot. "I'll need to run final checks," she said, already calculating the pre-launch sequence in her mind. "You'll have time," Wei assured her. "The Council will debate until the last possible moment. They always do." The next 4 hours passed in a blur of activity. While politicians argued, Ilara descended into the secret hangar bay carved into the lunar bedrock. There, suspended in a cradle of advanced machinery, Thunderbolt waited. The ship was beautiful in its simplicity, just 120 meters of sleek, angular design with a midnight black hull that seemed to drink in the light. No external weapons were visible, nothing to suggest its true purpose. To an observer, it might have appeared to be nothing more than an experimental courier vessel. Dr. Aisha Moyo, chief engineer of the Thunderbolt project, met Ilara at the boarding ramp. The brilliant physicist had been the driving force behind the prototype's revolutionary systems. "She's ready," Dr. Moyo said, falling into step beside Ilara. "The quantum displacement matrix is stable, and the phase shift shields are at optimal capacity. The new gravitational lens array has been calibrated to your neural signature." "And the primary weapon system?" Ilara asked, keeping her voice low despite the security of the hangar. Dr. Moyo's expression turned serious. "The Singularity Cannon is operational, but, Commander, its power exceeds even our most optimistic projections. The simulations suggest it could tear apart a Hegemony dreadnought with a single sustained burst." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Ilara replied, though both women knew the likelihood of peaceful resolution was vanishingly small. As they completed the pre-launch checklist, the comm system chimed. General Okafor's hologram appeared on the bridge. "It's decided," he said without preamble. "The Security Council has voted. We fight." Ilara nodded, already settling into the neural interface chair that would link her consciousness directly to Thunderbolt's systems. Rules of engagement. Attempt communication first. Offer them one chance to withdraw their demands and leave our system. If they refuse, the general hesitated, the weight of what he was about to authorize visible in his eyes. You are cleared to demonstrate Thunderbolt's capabilities as you see fit. Understood, Ilara said, feeling the neural connectors activate at the base of her skull. For Earth. For all of us, Okafor replied. Godspeed, Commander. The launch sequence initiated with barely a whisper. Unlike conventional spacecraft, Thunderbolt required no massive boosters or dramatic ignition. The quantum displacement drive simply folded space around the vessel, removing it from lunar orbit and repositioning it instantly at the edge of the solar system, directly in the path of the approaching Hegemony fleet. In the flagship of the Hegemony Armada, Supreme Commander Kavosh stood with his 4 arms clasped behind his back, compound eyes taking in the tactical display with disdain. These humans are more stubborn than anticipated, he commented to his second-in-command. Their governing body has rejected our terms. Sub-Commander T. Larry clicked her mandibles in amusement. Perhaps they believe their primitive defenses can withstand us. Their arrogance is almost admirable. Arrogance implies capability, Kavosh corrected. The humans have neither the technology nor the tactical experience to pose any threat to the hegemony. Their resistance is merely the final spasm of a species about to learn its proper place in the cosmic order. An alert sounded from the sensor station, drawing both officers' attention. Supreme Commander called the sensor operator, a member of the crystalline HFY species. We're detecting an anomalous energy signature directly ahead. A vessel has appeared. Kavosh moved to the forward viewport, not accelerated into position. No, Commander. One moment there was nothing. The next it was there. The energy signature does not match any known propulsion system in our database. Kavosh studied the small vessel now visible against the backdrop of stars. It was tiny compared to even the smallest ships in his fleet, hardly larger than a diplomatic shuttle. They send a single ship to face an armada, he said incredulously. Open a communication channel. Let us hear what madness drives this foolishness. The main view screen activated, revealing a human female with dark skin and close-cropped hair. A neural interface system was visible at the base of her skull. Primitive technology, by Hegemony standards. Hegemony Fleet, this is Commander Ilara Voss of Earth Defense Forces, the human said calmly. You have entered sovereign Earth space with hostile intent. On behalf of the United Nations of Earth, I am instructed to offer you one opportunity to withdraw your demands and return to Hegemony space peacefully. Laughter rippled through the Hegemony command deck. Commander Voss, Kavosh replied, not bothering to hide his amusement. Your courage is noted but misplaced. What exactly do you intend to accomplish with a single vessel against 16 warships? The human's expression remained impassive. Supreme Commander, I suggest you scan my vessel more thoroughly before you make assumptions about its capabilities. Something in her tone gave Kavosh pause. He gestured to his sensor operator, who immediately began a more detailed analysis. Supreme Commander, the operator said after a moment, confusion evident in his crystalline voice. I'm detecting energy readings this can't be right. The power signature exceeds anything in our database. It appears to be generating some form of localized gravitational distortion. Impossible, Kavosh snapped. The humans don't possess such technology. We've possessed many things you don't know about, Commander Voss said through the still-open channel. The hegemony has underestimated Earth for the last time. This is your final warning. Withdraw or face the consequences. Kavosh felt a flicker of uncertainty, quickly replaced by indignation. No primitive species would dictate terms to the hegemony. Target that vessel, he ordered. Full barrage. Obliterate it. With pleasure, Supreme Commander, his weapons officer replied. Streams of plasma fire and quantum torpedoes lanced out from the lead ships of the Hegemony fleet, converging on the solitary Earth vessel. The firepower directed at Thunderbolt was enough to reduce a small moon to rubble. Commander Voss did not attempt to evade. Instead, as the weapon's fire approached, a shimmering field surrounded Thunderbolt. The devastating barrage simply vanished, absorbed into what appeared to be a localized rift in spacetime. Silence fell over the Hegemony command deck. "What just happened?" Kavosh demanded. "The human vessel appears to have absorbed our attack," the sensor operator reported, disbelief evident in his voice. "The energy has been converted and is now being channeled into their ship's primary systems." On the view screen, Commander Voss's expression remained unchanged. "That was your answer. Very well. Now I'll provide mine." Thunderbolt's sleek hull began to glow with an inner light, sections shifting and reconfiguring as hidden systems activated. A seam appeared along its length, revealing what looked like a lens of pure darkness. "What is that?" T. Larry whispered. "Hegemony vessels. This is what happens when you corner a species for 70 years and leave them no choice but to innovate or perish," Voss said. "This is the Singularity Cannon. A demonstration will be provided on an uninhabited celestial body." Thunderbolt rotated, aiming at a comet drifting at the edge of the engagement zone. A pulse of what looked like concentrated shadow erupted from the vessel, striking the comet. There was no explosion, no dramatic flash. The comet simply collapsed in on itself, compressed to a point before vanishing entirely, leaving nothing but empty space. The implications were not lost on Kavosh. A weapon that could create a controlled gravitational singularity powerful enough to compress matter out of existence, yet precise enough to target a specific object. For the first time in his centuries-long military career, Supreme Commander Kavosh felt fear. "The next demonstration," Commander Voss continued, her voice now carrying an edge of steel, "will not be on an uninhabited object, unless you immediately power down your weapon systems and prepare to receive Earth's diplomats. We are finished being the Hegemony servants. Today marks the beginning of a new relationship, one of equals." Kavosh looked around his command deck, seeing the same realization dawning on the faces of his crew. The humans had not only developed technology that rivaled or exceeded the Hegemonies, but they had done so in secret, while appearing to be compliant. "How many more of these vessels do you have?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Commander Voss smiled for the first time. "That, Supreme Commander, is exactly the question you should be asking yourself. Because you don't know, do you? You don't know what else we've built while you weren't looking." As the full implications sank in, Kavosh realized that everything had changed in an instant. The Hegemony's dominance over Earth, maintained through technological superiority and military threat, had evaporated the moment Thunderbolt revealed its true nature. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he wondered how many other supposedly primitive species throughout the galaxy were quietly developing the means to throw off the Hegemony's yoke. The Reckoning. The Hegemony fleet hung motionless against the backdrop of distant stars, all weapons powered down as instructed. On Earth, in the United Nations Security Council chamber, representatives from every nation watched the live feed from Thunderbolt's external cameras with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "My God," whispered the French delegate. "She actually did it." General Okafor stood at the podium, his normally stoic demeanor betraying a hint of pride. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you are witnessing is the culmination of Project Lightning Strike, a 15-year endeavor combining the best scientific minds from 27 nations. Thunderbolt represents not just a technological breakthrough, but a philosophical one. For the first time since first contact, humanity has seized control of its own destiny among the stars." "At what cost?" the Chinese representative asked, leaning forward. "The Hegemony controls thousands of worlds across 17 star systems. If they perceive us as a genuine threat, rather than just an annoyance, they could bring their full military might against Earth. Which is precisely why Commander Voss has been instructed not to destroy any Hegemony vessels unless absolutely necessary," Okafor replied. "This is a demonstration of capability, not the beginning of a war." On the main screen, they could see a shuttle departing from Thunderbolt, heading toward the Hegemony flagship. Earth's hastily assembled diplomatic team, led by Ambassador Lucia Reyes, was about to make history, the first humans to negotiate with the Hegemony as equals rather than supplicants. Inside Thunderbolt's command module, Ilara Voss remained connected to the ship's neural interface, monitoring the situation with senses expanded far beyond normal human perception. Through the ship's advanced sensor array, she could feel the energy signatures of the Hegemony vessels, detect the subtle shifts in their power distribution that might indicate treachery. "Commander," came Dr. Moyo's voice through the communication system. "How are the neural feedback levels?" "Stable," Ilara replied, though she could feel the strain of maintaining such deep integration with Thunderbolt's systems. The human brain wasn't designed to process this much information, even with the neural dampeners working at maximum capacity. "The gravitational lens array is fully charged if we need it." "Let's hope we don't," Dr. Moyo said quietly. The simulations never accounted for using it against multiple targets simultaneously. Neither woman voiced the real concern, that using the singularity cannon at full power might create a chain reaction they couldn't control, potentially threatening not just the Hegemony fleet, but the very fabric of space-time in this sector. The weapon had never been intended for extensive combat use. It was a deterrent, a single decisive stroke meant to reshuffle the galactic power dynamic. "Ambassador Reyes has docked with the Hegemony flagship," reported Lieutenant Park from the auxiliary control station. Switching to their internal feed, the holographic display shifted, showing Ambassador Reyes and her team being escorted through the cavernous corridors of the alien vessel. The Hegemony's aesthetic was all hard angles and pulsing bioluminescence, a reflection of their compound-eyed perception of the world. Supreme Commander Kavosh awaited them in what appeared to be a ceremonial chamber, flanked by representatives of the various species that made up the Hegemony's ruling council. His posture was rigid, mandibles held in the position that Ilara recognized from her intensive xenobiology training, as indicating extreme displeasure controlled by formal necessity. "Ambassador Reyes," Kavosh began without preliminary courtesies, "your vessel's capabilities have earned you this audience. Speak your terms." Reyes, a veteran diplomat with over 30 years of experience, didn't flinch at the abruptness. "Supreme Commander, the United Nations of Earth presents the following non-negotiable conditions for peace. First, the immediate recognition of Earth and all human colonies as sovereign territory, exempt from tribute or resource taxation. Second, the withdrawal of all Hegemony military assets from the Sol system within 30 standard days. Third, the opening of unrestricted trade routes for human vessels throughout Hegemony space. Fourth, access to the galactic archives currently restricted to member species." Murmurs rippled through the Hegemony representatives. A member of the avian Krex species stepped forward, feathered crest rising in agitation. "You dictate terms to the Hegemony. One prototype vessel, regardless of its power, does not elevate your species to equal standing with a civilization that has maintained galactic peace for 12,000 years. Ambassador Reyes remained unperturbed. "Counselor, with respect, a peace maintained through subjugation is no peace at all. Earth does not seek war with the Hegemony, merely the freedom to determine our own path among the stars. The terms I've presented are fair. They allow the Hegemony to maintain its broader authority while recognizing humanity's right to self-determination. And if we refuse?" Kavosh asked, compound eyes fixed on the human diplomat. "Then Commander Voss will provide a more substantial demonstration of Thunderbolt's capabilities," Reyes replied evenly. "One that will be observed by every subjugated species throughout your territory." The implication was clear. If news spread that the mighty Hegemony had been forced to retreat by a single vessel from a supposedly primitive world, their control over countless other species might begin to crumble. Back on Thunderbolt, Ilara watched the exchange with growing unease. Something about the Hegemony flagship's energy signature had changed, subtle fluctuations that the ship's AI was struggling to interpret. "Lieutenant Park, run a deep scan of the flagship's engineering section," she ordered. Focus on quantum fluctuations in the sublight drive. Commander, Park replied after a moment, concern evident in his voice. I'm detecting signs of an antimatter cascade building in their main reactor. They're overriding safety protocols. This looks like preparation for a self-destruct sequence. Hilara's mind raced through the implications. If the Hegemony flagship detonated its antimatter core this close to the diplomatic shuttle, Ambassador Reyes and her team would be instantly vaporized. The resulting explosion would also damage or destroy several other vessels in the fleet, potentially killing thousands of alien crew members who had no say in their leadership's decisions. Open a direct channel to Kavash, she ordered. Priority override. The communication system chirped compliance, and a moment later, Supreme Commander Kavash's image appeared in her neural display, superimposed over the diplomatic feed. Commander Voss, he acknowledged, mandibles twitching in what she recognized as surprise. Our discussion with your ambassador is proceeding according to protocol. Cut the pretense, Commander, Ilara said sharply. My sensors detect the antimatter cascade in your main reactor. Power it down immediately, or I will be forced to take action. For a fraction of a second, genuine shock registered in Kavash's alien features, not at being caught, but at the fact that human sensors could detect such a carefully concealed process. You continue to surprise me, human, he said, his tone shifting to something almost respectful. But you face a miscalculation. Yes, I have initiated the cascade, a regrettable necessity in the face of unacceptable demands. But if you use your weapon against my flagship, the diplomatic shuttle will be destroyed in the process. And if you do nothing, the antimatter detonation will accomplish the same end. Either way, your ambassador dies, and the hegemony can claim this entire incident was a tragic accident during peaceful negotiations. Ilara felt a cold certainty settle in her chest. This was the moment everything hinged on, not just the fate of the diplomatic mission, but potentially Earth's future relationship with the galactic community. There's a third option you haven't considered, she replied, already interfacing with Thunderbolt's gravitational lens array through the neural link. One that demonstrates why underestimating humans has always been the hegemony's greatest mistake. Without waiting for his response, Ilara activated the ship's most innovative system, not the singularity cannon, but the precision gravitational manipulator that Dr. Moyo had developed as an unexpected application of the same technology. Through her enhanced perception, Ilara could see the antimatter cascade building within the Hegemony flagship's reactor, a gathering storm of destructive potential. With surgical precision, she directed a focused gravitational field around the reactor core, creating a localized bubble of distorted spacetime. What are you doing? Kavash demanded, as alarms began blaring throughout his vessel. Saving lives, Ilara answered simply. With a mental command, she initiated a partial phase shift. Inside the gravitational bubble, the antimatter reactor now existed in a slightly different dimensional state, technically still present within the ship, but unable to interact with the normal matter around it. The cascade continued, but its effects could not propagate beyond the bubble. On the Hegemony flagship, engineers watched in disbelief as their reactor readings indicated the full antimatter detonation occurring in a space that somehow remained intact, the apocalyptic energy having nowhere to go. Impossible, whispered Kavash. No, Ilara corrected. Just improbable. Earth has had 70 years to study the fundamental laws of physics that the hegemony takes for granted. We found the exceptions, the loopholes, the spaces between what you thought were absolute rules. She shifted her focus, extending Thunderbolt's gravitational influence to the diplomatic shuttle. With gentle precision, she extracted it from the Hegemony flagship's docking bay, bringing it safely alongside her own vessel. Your antimatter reactor is now contained in a stable phase shift bubble, she explained to Kavash. It will remain that way for approximately 6 hours before returning to normal spacetime, at which point, if the cascade hasn't been properly neutralized, your flagship will indeed be destroyed. That gives you ample time to evacuate your crew if your engineers can't solve the problem. Kavash's compound eyes dilated in what might have been astonishment, or perhaps a newfound emotion that had no name in his species' lexicon. The realization that a civilization he had dismissed as primitive had not only matched but exceeded the hegemony's understanding of reality itself. "The diplomatic shuttle is secure," Lieutenant Park reported. "Ambassador Reyes is requesting permission to board." "Granted," Ilara responded, before turning her attention back to Kavash. "Supreme Commander, I believe our diplomats were in the middle of negotiations. Perhaps we should resume under more transparent conditions." 4 hours later, in orbit around Earth, the United Nations Security Council reconvened an emergency session. Ambassador Reyes stood at the podium, her diplomatic team arrayed behind her, faces betraying a mixture of exhaustion and elation. "The Treaty of Seoul has been signed," she announced, holding up a data crystal that glowed with embedded authenticity markers. "The hegemony has accepted all our primary conditions, with minor adjustments to the implementation timeline. Earth and all human colonies are now recognized as sovereign territory. We have earned our place among the stars." Applause erupted throughout the chamber, representatives from nations that had been historical enemies embracing one another in the shared triumph of humanity's collective achievement. In the observation gallery, General Okafor stood beside Dr. Moyo, watching the celebration below. "It worked," Moyo said softly. "Everything we theorized, everything we built, it actually worked." "Did you doubt it would?" Okafor asked. "Science is always doubt," she replied with a small smile. "Until it's proof." The general nodded toward a side entrance, where Commander Voss had quietly appeared, disconnected from Thunderbolt's neural interface, but still carrying herself with the heightened awareness that came from hours of expanded consciousness. "There's the real hero," he said. "The perfect synthesis of human determination and technological innovation." Dr. Moyo studied Ilara thoughtfully. "No, that's not quite right. The technology was just a tool. What made today possible wasn't Thunderbolt's capabilities. It was Commander Voss's choice not to use them to their full destructive potential. When faced with a threat, she found a way to save lives rather than take them." "The most human solution of all," Okafor agreed. Down on the chamber floor, Ambassador Reyes was continuing her address. "This marks not just a new chapter for Earth, but potentially for countless other species throughout the galaxy. The hegemony's monopoly on advanced technology has been broken. Their assumption of inherent superiority has been disproven. And most importantly, we have demonstrated that advancement doesn't have to come at the cost of our humanity." In the back of the chamber, Ilara listened, feeling the weight of the past 15 hours. And the past 15 years of Project Lightning Strike, finally beginning to lift from her shoulders. A junior communications officer approached, offering her a secure tablet. "Commander, priority message from Luna Base. They've completed preliminary analysis of the hegemony technical database provided as part of the treaty. There's something you should see." Ilara took the tablet, scanning the report with growing amazement. According to the analysis, the hegemony had been deliberately suppressing technological innovation across the galaxy for millennia, intervening whenever a species began developing technologies that might challenge their dominance. Earth had only succeeded because the secret project had been buried so deeply that even the hegemony's extensive intelligence network had missed it. But more importantly, the database contained references to dozens of other species in similar positions to humanity, technologically capable civilizations chafing under hegemony rule, potential allies in a new galactic order. Ilara looked up at the chamber, where Ambassador Reyes was concluding her speech. "Today we step out of the shadow of subjugation and into the light of true independence. But this is not the end of our journey. It is merely the beginning of humanity's true place among the stars." As applause filled the chamber once more, Ilara felt a smile form on her scared face. The ambassador had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. Humanity had not just secured its own freedom, it had unwittingly positioned itself to become the catalyst for a transformation that would reshape the galaxy. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, Thunderbolt waited, not just a weapon or a ship, but a symbol of what was possible when a species refused to accept the limitations imposed upon it by others. The universe, Ilara realized, would never be the same again.